Good afternoon, YouTube. I'm making this video in response to a video that came out via the CTV News. They were reporting on Premier Doug Ford and the union head essentially trying to lay blame on the unions for the failure over the long-term care and how things managed to get severely out of hand and inhumane, to put it lightly. Please enjoy.
Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, put some blame for the horrific conditions in some long-term care homes onto union members today. The Premier claimed unionized government inspectors refused to go into these care facilities back in April to carry out on-site inspections during the pandemic. And he says they need to be accountable. He also called out the union head, Smokey Thomas, who quickly afterwards released an April 22nd letter that the union wrote to the Premier. In the letter, it said there are only 164 inspectors for 626 long-term care homes, and that the inspectors were not properly trained or properly protected to function during the pandemic. He also wrote, quote, the inspections would not provide us with any more information than we don't already have.
Okay, so I'm sorry to interject, but there's a few important points. What the union head is doing is misdirecting the blame over his own organization by their incompetence. He's also blaming the timing, the circumstances. This is very much indicative of somebody who's trying to conceal or protect their own back. I agree with Ford a little bit. See, the purpose of the unions is to protect the workers under its purview. And when they say they have 176 inspectors to take care of 600 some homes, that should be plenty enough for them to go out and at least inspect a few homes, right? 176 inspectors can do a lot of damage if they're motivated, say, over a month's time, and they've had 3 months to take care of the job. So it either means they're extremely lazy or incompetent, or they didn't attend to their job at all. So that's all that you need to know, essentially, to see that there's something rotten going on here, because typically the unions are supposed to protect the interests of those workers, right? So evidently, they failed.
Going on to say residents are not receiving the care they need, and that the privately run long-term care centers had no plan for the pandemic. So, did the union fail, or did the government fail? Let's find out.
Both,
One perspective.
in my opinion.
Thomas is the president of that union. Doug Ford was talking about the Ontario Public Service Employees Union. He joins us from Toronto. Smokey Thomas, good to have you back on the program. What was your reaction when you heard Doug Ford say he was no longer going to take bullets for the union workers?
I just about fell off my chair. Not only has he not taken bullets for frontline workers, the inspectors, we've actually helped him dodge many bullets. So what really, I believe the Premier should have read the April the 22nd letter we wrote to him and to the Minister Fullerton. We've never received a response. They did circulate that letter, the government did, I guess, to the media in Toronto here today. I could give you a quick synopsis of what's happened here. I think there's a whole, I know there's a whole bunch of bureaucrats in the Ministry of Long-Term Care and the Ministry of Labor that have known for a long, long time that there's problems in long-term care. Back in the Liberal years, they laid off nursing home inspectors. They changed the inspection protocols.
Yeah, so there's another misdirection, changing it to the previous administration's fault, rather than taking responsibility for what's happened. Already his attitude shows me a little bit about what's going on.
They reduced the number of inspections. The Tories, didn't do anything to fix that. So I think there's a whole group of bureaucrats, particularly in the Ministry of Long-Term Care, that stuck their collective foot in the Premier's mouth today. I don't like seeing anybody made to be look bad because it's not true. Our inspectors
but we're just respectfully, people should look bad because thousands of people are dead.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
the premier
Yeah.
said yesterday, he goes, until the military blew the whistle, I never thought it was that bad. Even in your April 22nd letter, you said we don't need to do on-site inspections. The union inspectors did not go to those sites. Should they have been there to warn how bad things have been, or because it took the military to expose that?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, well, Evan, so to back up a bit, so we already knew what was wrong. I think most people in the healthcare industry, in the labor union movement, we've known for 20 years, over 20 years, what's wrong in our nursing homes, long-term care homes. So it's not like people didn't know. It's not like these bureaucrats didn't know. I would fault the premier for listening to somebody else without calling us and saying, hey, is this true? Because it's not true. Our inspectors have never refused to go in. What we put in that April the 22nd letter was some cautions. First off, they didn't have protocols, procedures, proper protective equipment for the inspectors. Some of the inspectors would be going into nursing homes that was not their genre, that was not their expertise in nursing homes. It was other parts of.
Oh my Lord. Okay, so this guy is trying to hide behind protocol and other nonsense. I shouldn't even call it that, but essentially, that's a very union answer. You convolute the question so much that you say, oh, protocol and specific this and specific that. Like, it is their job. That's the bottom line. If we're cutting through the nonsense, it is their job to at least review it. And the fact of the matter is, it got that badly out of hand, again, that the military did have to step in. I want to know who called the military to step in. That's what I want to know. How did it manage to get out, essentially? And I'm thinking that the union people already knew, or they were ignorant to it, especially the heads, but some of them already knew, and they did turn a blind eye to it.
Of the healthcare system or Ministry of Labor. So they needed to have some training. They needed to have and be told what to do when they go in there. It's management that told them to phone the homes, right, to not go in. And at one point they told them, the bureaucrats said to our members, well, just go up to the home and knock on the door and ask for a mask. Well, back in April, they didn't have masks. And back on April the 14th, the chief medical officer of health said workers in long-term care could only work in one home. Well, management in the Ministry of Long-Term Care and Labor wanted workers to inspect 4 to 5 homes without proper equipment, without proper.
That's besides the point.
A lot of people are saying, everyone's now defending what they did. Why, if the inspecting was so good, if everyone knew, why did it take the military to come out with these horrific reports and expose this? Why did it take the death of thousands of people, sir?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's the question that's going to haunt a lot of people for a very long time. Evan, my union has highlighted the concerns in these facilities for years and years. I mean, I'm on the record, lots of fights with Kathleen Wynne, Dalton McGinty over these homes for years. In that April the 22nd letter, we highlighted all the things that the military, not specific details of individuals, but all the issues in there. And and there have been inspections, Evan. The ministry asked for volunteers. Some of our, over 30 of our members volunteered to go and start doing inspections 3 weeks ago, even though they didn't have all the equipment that they should have. And my chief of staff spent 7 hours on the phone yesterday with the premier's chief of staff, sorting out how to do it. Because I absolutely, there should be inspections in these homes for 2 weeks. They still don't have the proper equipment, the PPEs, to keep themselves safe, but more importantly, to keep the residents and other people in the home safe. And he's finally realized and said they'll just go into one home, not 4 or 5, and be spreader, right?
Smokey Thomas, just real quick. Should the Minister of Long-Term Care, Minister Fullerton, should she have known all this? Is it fair to say this was her responsibility? And there were letters back in April that the idea that no one knew how bad it was. Is that bogus? Should she have known? Should she have informed the Premier a lot earlier?
Evan, she should have known. And if she didn't, then heads in that ministry should roll. Deputy minister should be leaving, assistant.
I really think that's just besides the point. A lot of this kind of talking on both sides of your mouth, I'm sick of it. Here's the truth. This guy should be fired. And people under his purview and under his management that were managing that situation should be fired. And they should be fined, and perhaps some of them should be put in jail. Because from what I read on the conditions of those homes, it takes some bloody heartless people to pretend as though they didn't do anything wrong and to blame bureaucracy and blame the system and blame the situation and blame little nonsense to excuse themselves from the responsibility of the failure to act on in mercy to those elderly people that were suffering for 3 months. It's like this kind of talking really, really bothers me. It's absolute nonsense. It shouldn't be accepted by anybody who was listening. Those are just tiny little political excuses and lies to get out of what, if they were really put on a tribunal, let's say, and said, made to confess the truth, you get the sense that they don't have any answers, like zero. If you really put them in a corner and you ask them the hard questions, they got nothing. They've got nonsensical answers like what this guy just answered. He should be fired. To me, the union's primary responsibility is to protect workers. But when it comes to the inspections, those inspectors are supposed to report to the union, to the government and whatnot, to ensure that the system is meeting and complying with all of the health standards that we have come to know in this country. And what I am seeing is what I suspected when I first read the report and the news. The healthcare system in this country, the people who are serving it on the management end seem to be quite heartless, political or otherwise. And the evidence shows in this situation with a nursing home. Like, those 5 can't be the only ones. If those ones are bad, there are probably so many throughout the province, not even restricted to Ontario. I bet when they do the review on Quebec, it'll be similar. But perhaps they'll get their act together in time so they can cover up the nonsense. But, it's very telling that the value of human life in this country is so low. And I don't want to condemn anyone, but I do condemn those that were responsible for letting those people suffer and sit in their own feces and go without changing a diaper for weeks, 2 weeks, I think it was, without feeding. There will be people with dementia. There were people that had coronavirus that were not restricted to, so that they would be isolated. The whole thing was in chaos. And, where is your discipline? Where is the system taking care of this? Like, if there's, let's call it a rule of law, and they have to follow that rule of law, the safety standards law, let's say, then that can't happen, even if there is a pandemic. You can't break rank, even if there's, let's call it the great enemy facing. You can't break rank, it means you maintain discipline and order, especially in times of like this, like chaos. It is pathetic and deeply embarrassing for me as a Canadian that we could let things get so disorderly. And, I have people of family that work in healthcare, and essentially they were saying the same thing. It's like, we have to obey our orders. They come from the top, but it looks like the top don't really know what they're doing. Like they don't know much about managing on like on the floor kind of idea, like what kind of situations they put. They're politicians. They're union people. They become so disenfranchised actually with what they're supposed to be looking after, with their own responsibilities. Look at this guy. I'm sure he's so high up there probably that his head is away from the task at hand, so to speak. And he's acting like he's completely blameless. Like, I don't like his answers. He should be apologizing. He should be apologizing to the families, to everybody. Like, oh, we had our inspectors, but they were... How dare you say that they're not allowed to enter the nursing home without a mask? You're going to send people there without proper equipment? Like, that's nonsense. How is it that a powerful organization like that can't scrap together 100 summer masks or more just to look after and send people in? Like, that's a bullshit excuse. Excuse my language. That's a nonsensical excuse. It doesn't hold water. How can you say that? So it's just an absolute joke. These people, the infrastructure, it's proof how corrupt it is. Like, the union is supposed to look after those people. Really. They're supposed to look after their own people, the workers, and ensure that the inspections, everything is up to the right standard. Right? It's pathetic. Anyways, I thank you for watching this video. Forgive me for my rant. Have a good day, and subscribe or comment or like this video if you enjoyed the content. Thank you so much.